Thank you everyone for joining the SBS group for our webcasts, cash flow forecasting and positive pay in Dynamics NAV. Again, if you have any questions, we will address them all at the end. Just please type them in the chat or question box. And today, Mary Carrero and Diana Harvey will lead the webinar, and I'll now turn the presentation over to Mary.
Thanks, Brittany. Today's webinar, my portion is going to be on positive pay. As she said, I'm Mary Carrero. I'm a NAV consultant. And then I'm going to turn it over to Diana Harvey, who is our senior support consultant, and she'll be doing the cash flow portion. Microsoft Dynamics NAV has a feature called positive pay, and this will help you reduce fraudulent transactions with your bank. It allows you to create an export file to send to the bank each time you cut paper checks. And the bank will then match the file against the checks presented for payment, flagging non-compliant checks for review and clearing checks which match the file. Setting up positive pay and using it is a relatively easy process. So today I'm going to show you how to set up the positive pay. We're going to create an export file, and then I'll show you how to manage the export files once they're done. The first step in setting up the positive pay feature is to understand your bank's requirements. Your bank can provide you with their specific format or layout required to process your file. NAV 2017 does come with two default formats already predefined in the system. These are for Bank of America and Citibank. These have already been vetted by Microsoft, so if you bank with either of these, you shouldn't have to set up the positive pay template. So what we're going to do now is go into NAV and have a look. So the first thing we need to do is I'm going to take you back to the home screen. We're going to search for data exchange definitions. I've added mine here to the navigation pane just to make it simpler for today's presentation. And if you look in here, you already have Bank of America positive pay, and right below it is Citibank positive pay. So we're going to take a look at the Bank of America today. You go up in the ribbon and you edit. So this one is already predefined for you, as I stated. What I want to point out to you is the type is listed as a positive pay export. And then down here in the line definitions, depending on your bank, Bank of America requires a header, a footer, and a detail. And if you need to see what these are or when you're creating it, you just highlight the line here and you hit the field mapping. This is the per transaction detail line for each check that you're cutting. And you'll see the columns for the export file as well as the fields in the system that the data will be extracted from. Now, this can be set up for any bank as long as you have their formatting and their file layout instructions. So let me close you that. If your bank can provide you with the data exchange definition to use, you can import that on this screen and it'll save you time on your setup. So the second piece of this then is to determine the flow of the information. We're going to go into the bank export import setup. Let me type a search and open that up. And I've already created this one, but it's as simple as hitting new, put a code in for your positive pay, name it, and then the direction here must be export positive pay. This part will fill in automatically. And then the data exchange definition code, you need to pick the one that is created on the last screen we were just at. Okay. So now this code is associated with the setup, and we're going to go attach it to the bank account then. So we're going to go into bank accounts, and again I've put that on my navigation pane to make it easier. We're going to look at my Bank of America, and if we edit it, what we're doing is down here on the transfer tab, you're going to the positive pay export code, and you're going to select the one you just created. This will tell the system which format to use to create the positive pay export file so that it matches what their needs are. You can have multiple positive pay formats, and you can use the same format for several bank accounts within the same institution. So the next step once we've set it up is to cut some checks. So I'm going to go into the payment journal, and I've created a batch for today's session. And I've taken the liberty to already put a few checks in here to cut. So we're going to print the checks. What you can do is print them to PDF, and you may want to send them Oh, that was going to give me some trouble. Hang on one second. See if I can find another one. If not, I've already cut some for you to see. See if we can print these. No, okay, it's going to give me some trouble on here, and I'm not going to take the time in our webinar to play with it. So we cut the checks, we post them. Then what we're going to do is go over to the bank accounts to create the export file. The Positive Pay export action is available on the bank account list. You'll see it up here in the ribbon. Or if you open the bank account itself, you'll also see it on that ribbon. So you can access it in either spot. So what you do is you say Positive Pay export, and these are a couple checks that have already been cut. The last upload date will default for you from the last time you created an export file. And then you can use the cutoff upload date as a way to filter the payments that you're including in the file you send to the bank. If you void a check or have voided a check that has already been exported, you need to adjust this last upload date. When NAV goes into the Positive Pay export process, it'll look at the last time it was run and it'll set the filters for this per that. So the system will not pick up a financial void that was posted using a date prior to this last upload date. So you'll need to remove this date in order to pick that up. This will just tell the system to give you all check ledger entries not sent to Positive Pay already. Now your check printing can be done multiple times and they'll all accumulate here, and then whenever you're ready to run the export process, you do so, and then that can save you some fees if your bank charges them, and minimize that with your file transmissions. So in this case, I'm going to use these that are here, and all I do is set export. It'll go through the process, and then if I open it, you'll see this is the file format that is necessary for Bank of America, and I would just save this, and then you can send this to your bank, however you decide to do that. Now we're going to manage the export file. NAV will store all these Positive Pay export files that it creates. This lets you view the summary and detail information included in the files at any time you need to. You can also re-export a Positive Pay file as needed, and I'll show you that in a minute. So what we're going to do is in the bank account card, and again, you can do this from the list as well. If you go to Navigate, you'll see Positive Pay entries. If you open the bank account card, same thing, you'll see your Positive Pay entries in the ribbon. So either way, you can access this list, and this shows you all of the export files that you've created. What you can do here is there's a confirmation number column. The bank will give you a confirmation when you upload the file, so we suggest for best practices that you put that in here. Just makes your life easier if you have to locate this file in question at a later time. So then once you're on this is the one we just exported. If you want to see the entry details, you can go to Navigate and click on Positive Pay Entry Details. And these are the two checks that were included in that export file. So then I told you that you could also re-export a file. So as you see right here on the Navigate button, there's a re-export Positive Pay file. So you can do that anytime you need to. And that's all I have on Positive Pay. Thank you for joining me, and I'm going to turn it over to Diana Harvey.
Good morning. I'm going to talk about cash flow. And so the things that we're going to cover is cash flow setups, cash flow forecast, the worksheets, the chart of cash flow accounts, and then just account schedules. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my system. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is just under departments, financial management is cash flows. So the first area that I want to talk about is actually going to be the chart of cash flow accounts. So this is kind of gives you an indication of how the information is gathered and then set up in the system. So you can actually, this just comes in standard in a Chronos system, and when you do chart of accounts and create a new one, this information will be here. These can be changed if needed. but I'm just going to kind of show you where some of the information comes from. So if we look at receivables here, and I select edit, and I'm just going to do a little drop down here. It has just a basic information. The account type is an entry, which means if you're familiar with the chart of accounts in NAV, is as if it's a posting account, but it's going to be called an entry account. Where it's important is the source type. Where are you pulling that information from? So your actual receivables. So this is looking at all customer ledger entries. Payables is looking at your vendor ledger entries. Liquid funds is looking at your bank account entries. We're going to talk about these cash flows. It also has open sales orders, purchase orders, fixed asset area, service orders, GL budgets, job and task. So it's pretty detailed as to where it's pulling in the information. So if I even come into here for private investments and I do a look, it's looking at cash flow manual revenue. All right, and we're going to talk about those in a moment here when dealing with the setup. All right, so there also are some that if I come in here and I edit, you can actually tell the system, is it actually a GL account? Or in this case, we're dealing with budgeting. And what GL account filter do I want to place on it? All right, so we're going to use the basic one that's in NAV. So it's going to deal with my cash, any of my disbursements, and then cash flow funds. So that's the chart of accounts. And like I said, you can add new ones if you wanted to, just as you have a new here. So you can create a name, add in the information, and then you would indent it, just like you would in normal chart of accounts. So you can add a line if you needed to. So I'm going to go back out to cash flows. So there are some cash flow transactions that you need to take into account in the future, but maybe you, obviously you haven't posted them in NAV. So it could be rental income. So maybe in this particular company, I have rental income for $2,900. So I want it to record and be out there for every month, knowing that that information is coming in. Financial assessments, private investments, and if I just go ahead and select to edit the list, I have a drop down here. And so you can have the information come in daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and you don't necessarily need it to be ended by, or you could push the date way out there if you're hoping that it's a continual revenue. And if I come in here, so examples of some manual expenses, personnel costs. So this is more reporting for payroll, information running cost, or financing. All right, finance cost. So these are just, you know they're coming out in the future, and you want it to be accounted for every month. And those are ones you can also add your own. We have done this for clients and added new ones, and it's just adding in a line of information. So it's not a lot of detail. It's just creating that entry. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go in and we're going to run a forecast. So this is just to gather the information. So I'm going to create a new one. And I'm going to do cash flow for January 2019 because it's January 1st and I want to have my information there. So considering the discounts or payment tolerance amounts, it's just, do I want to take that into consideration when I'm doing my forecasting out there? This is just my demo system. I don't have a lot of things related to discounting, so I'm going to not include them. So one of the things is that I can consider in this is cash flow payment terms. So you can, on your customer card, you have your normal payment term, and maybe your normal payment term is 30 days. You can put in there a cash flow payment term because reality is they have a 30-day payment term, but they might not pay for 60 days. So you want your cash flow to be accurate and account that their cash is not going to come in for 60 days. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then I'm also just going to come back out here for one moment, and I'm going to show you that field because it is important to understand that you have what you're hoping or when you're hoping to collect, and then reality of when you actually think you can collect. So I'm just going to edit the first vendor or customer here. And this is also in case you're seeing that field and wondering what it means. And if we me select my invoicing. Oh, actually, I wanted to select my payments. So there is the cash flow payment terms code right here. Okay, so that's what it's talking about. You have your regular payment terms, current month, and then you could put one that's a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to go back to my cash flow. This one I'll just, do I want to show the chart in my roll center? And I have it in there. It's just going to tell me it's going to replace the existing one. I'm fine with that. All right, so when do I want to capture my budget information? So I want to do it from the 1st through the end of the year. Okay, and then manual payments from the 1st, and let's just go to the end of the year. All right, because I'll rerun this again the 1st of February. Move overdue cash flow dates to work date. So that goes back to this, consider the payment terms. All right, so it's asking me, do I want to push it out and be realistic of information from this point forward? Okay, I can't cash flow if I'm running this for January and assume that my cash flow in December is accurate, because obviously December is past. So that's just asking, do I want to move the information forward? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And let me go back into my cash flow. Sorry, got a little bit sideways there. So I have my worksheet. And let me edit. And for some reason, it does seem to drop the name now and then. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to process the cash flow. So per those parameters, I'm going to have it bring in lines. So now I want to suggest my lines. And this is how I ran it last time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pick, you want to make sure you pick the current cash flow you just created. And these, I put a checkbox on the ones that I want to include. Okay, I don't do service orders in my system, so I do not want to include them. I have not budgeted for fixed assets, so I chose to exclude those. I do want to bring in the other information. I want to bring in budgets as of 2019. So that way in NAV also, because you can have more than one budget for a particular time frame, that you are picking the exact budget that you want. It's not going to include all the budgets. I also do not want to include jobs. There's a whole section on Cortana Intelligence, which is part of NAV 2017 and the web client, that will help automate the process of running your cash flow statements. All right. If I want to group by document type, I'm not going to do that so that we actually can see a lot of the detail. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say okay. All right, so now the system's brought in the information, and I'll go ahead and expand it. So this is just bringing in, my cash balances for my liquid accounts, my receivables. It's looking at posted sales invoices. It also right here is telling me if it's already overdue. Okay, so that once again, it's moving the information to the current date and giving me that information. If I had any errors or warnings related to any of the entries, it would show me down here. I can also move it out to Excel if I wanted to. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is NAV has a process called register. So it's just assuming that everything you brought in, you're in a sense telling the system I'm good with this. So let's stamp it that it's good and process it, and the lines have been successfully registered. I'm going to say okay. So now I come back out. Once again, I'm in my cash forecast. So I want to go ahead and I can select statistics, and that just groups the information. All right, so if I want to, I can take a look at my information. Once again, I can drill down on it, see the detail. I have my open sales orders. I can see the detail. And so like I said, this is just giving me a snapshot in time. And I'm going to go ahead and close that. And so now the next thing I want to do is I want to have this information and look at it where I'm not just seeing a list of information. I want to kind of see it and play with the information and know it by day. All right. So I'm going to go here to cash flow availability by periods. So this drops my information in. All right, so I shouldn't have anything in the prior time frames because I pushed all the open balances, anything to a more current work date. If you might have some sales orders or purchase orders that are in the past, and that's related to putting on there the expected receipt date or expected ship dates and keeping that information accurate. The more you work with the dates inside NAV, the more accurate your information will be that you're displaying here. All right, so right here you'll see the manual expenses and you'll see the manual revenue. So those are those transactions that we put together, and it just shows that it uses them and displaying that information. All right, I can also up here, I can change my view. So if I want to, I could look at it by week, bring in the information, and there's a little bit of, the last period date, then I have my information here. If some people, they really are detail oriented and they want to see this information and look at it out there by day and see what dates are on the pieces. So, a week or a month will definitely give you the information that you're looking for. And then as I show you going across here, it has the GL balances, and then it has the total. So let me widen this up a little bit here. So I have my information where my cash flow is, where I might have a bad week, might be the last day of the month. I want to look at my sales orders. A lot of things are pushed to next month. Maybe if we can get some of these sales closed in the month of January instead of the 42,000, or I can actually collect some of these receivables a little bit sooner. So this is just, once again, I can drill down on it. I can send to Excel. I can start looking at this information and start controlling the cash flow a little bit more. So this is just kind of a worksheet area that lets you look at that information. So I'm going to go ahead and back up here. So let me go back over here to cash flows. So cash flow forecast is where we go in and you create the cash flow. You give it the parameters in which you want to work the information. You would go into cash flow worksheet. Then you would suggest the lines, and then you register the lines. And I'm going to back out here again. And then I have the cash flow availability by periods, which shows you the detail and allows you to work the information. Now, me personally, if I was doing the cash flow on a regular basis, I would make that a bigger icon in my ribbon because we have a tendency to lose it when it's just a small icon like that. So I'm going to close this back out. I'm going to go back out here. So we talked about cash flow forecasting. We talked about creating the chart of accounts. And when I come back in here, you notice the amounts. These are ones that it's pulling it from the actual source. And this is just a current in time. Okay, go back out here. We talked about the manual revenue and expenses. And then under task is just the ability to go in and actually do a worksheet. Okay, where you can suggest lines instead of doing it through the forecast. All right, but you would need a forecast to associate it with. So the next area that I just want to talk about a little bit is on the reporting side. There's two reports that will give you the information out. So one of them is going to be your regular account schedules. All right, so I'm going to actually just pick this up. And actually, I'm going to close out here. Let me just go to account schedules. Okay, so those that are in NAV 2013 and up, you might have noticed that there are some cash flow statements that are part of NAV. So cash flow, calculation of cash flow. And these were built into the system based off of the chart of cash flow accounts. So if I come in here to select it, I'm going to edit. So you'll notice now the totaling types, if I do a drop down here, you've had in the past posting accounts, total accounts, formulas, and everything down to the set base for a percentage. Then there's NAV does cost accounting also, so there's cost type, cost total, and then the cash flow, it'll do cash flow entry and the cash flow total accounts. It points to the chart of cash flow accounts, not your chart of accounts. So this is also where, that information comes into play. And that's why some of these are already preset in NAV. So you can run financials, and you can also do use these in conjunction with your actual chart of account accounts, so you could do some comparisons if you wanted to on information. So if I come back here, I'm going to go in and run on the report. I come up here and let's just go ahead and pick a cash flow statement and the ending date. And you never think it's going to take too long until you're doing it in front of a bunch of other people. It's probably going to take a minute. Oh, here it is being generated. Oh. Well, this will be my ending date. Maybe I should have picked the 12/31. Well, it does create an account schedule. I must have used the different dates when I used it earlier. So the next report I want to talk about is going to be the cash flow date list. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I picked my starting date, and then the intervals, I want it to be 3-month time frame and 1-month intervals. All right, and I'm going to pick my last one here, and I'm going to go ahead and do a preview. So this just takes that information that we look at in the worksheet and kind of puts it into a report for you. So some people, their managers or the CFOs or the boss, they want to see it on paper. You know, they're not going to look at it in NAV. They want to actually see it on a piece of paper and not necessarily on a financial. All right, so this just shows the information, and it kind of gives it to you, you know, per the month, and it gives you the information going across, and then the cash flow reference. So let me just make it a little bit bigger. I don't know what the viewing is like, so I'll make it a little bit larger, and it gives that information out. So if I expand my information and I do it by 30, and I do 1 day. Oh, I suppose I should have done 31. I forgot in January. I'm in January. So it'll give it to me the information by day. I also could do it by week, and I could do 52 intervals, so it would give it to me for the whole year. So it depends on how far out you want to look at that information. Now, a couple other things regarding the cash flow. So here we go. It has that. So it shows my information by week. And where there's any issues. So then afterwards, it gives me the after, and then like I said, I could run this out a little bit further if I wanted to. Now the other thing dealing with the cash flow worksheets and the forecast, they are a point in time. So when I run this and I run it for the month of January, if as soon as I ran it, you did a big deposit of, you know, somebody paid off invoices, 300,000 or something like that, it's not going to show in the cash flow. If you all of a sudden put in a whole bunch of sales orders, that is also not going to show in the cash flow forecasting. So if you have a need for this and you want to see it on a regular basis, you could run this. I mean, it doesn't take that long to go in and just create a new one and run it, and you could do it every Friday and have the information for what's going on Monday. You could run it every day if you needed to. You could run it once a month, as often as you want, because once they're not used anymore, then you could just go ahead and delete them. So I'm going to go ahead and select my home screen, and if I think I had a chart here that was looking at the cash flow information, so it would have that there also. And I created a shortcut menu called cash flow, and I just put the forecast there, my chart of accounts, so I could take a look at it, and then setting up the information. So this just allowed me not to have to access departments on a regular basis. And let me just check and make sure that that was all on the reports that I was going to cover for cash flow. Yeah, so the list, and then the history just shows you as the information has come in as to which cash flow forecast, and so you have the detail from before. So if you think, well, I don't remember seeing that on the last cash flow, you could go in and look to see if it's there. So this just brings in all the history. And I think that is it on the cash flow. And so the last thing I just want to make sure to cover is if you need to contact us, that's my direct number, and then that's Mary's direct number. You can always email any support questions, or if you have any additional information or need any additional information on positive pay or cash flow, you're welcome to email it to us, and also to visit our website. And just as one follow-up, as I mentioned a little bit, the cash flow is available from NAV 2013 on, so 13, 15, 16, and 17 versions have it. The positive pay is available in NAV 16 and NAV 17. So if you're on one of those versions and you want some additional information about it, please let us know.
Okay, thank you, Mary and Diana. We did have one question regarding the positive pay. The question was, there's currently only 2 banks, correct? And is there a plan to include other banks or a generic export?
Well, there's 2 already set up and tested out by Microsoft that come with the software. I don't know currently if they have it on the roadmap to add any more, but you can always create them for any bank as long as you have the information from the bank.
Yeah, we have clients who use it and use a completely different banks, and they just go in and do the formatting. So if you need additional information, you know, Mary showed how you can go in and create header, detail, footer, but if you want a document or something, just email us.
Okay. If anyone else has any questions about the presentation, please feel free to contact SBS Group at info@sbsgroupusa.com, or you can always find more information on our website at www.sbsgroupusa.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.